Hi everyone, it's Tori from Tori Story Creations, and in this video tutorial series, I'm going to walk you through how to crochet this adorable Marina keychain from Animal Crossing. This video is part 2 of a 2-part video tutorial series. We'll learn how to crochet Marina's mouth and how to attach her mouth, felt details, and her keychain. If you want to learn how to crochet Marina's head, how to attach her eyes, and how to sew on her eyelashes, please watch part 1. Part 1 also describes the materials you'll need for this tutorial, so I do recommend checking it out if you haven't already. I'll have the link to part 1 and the materials list in the description of this video. So let's get started. To crochet our mouth, we're going to use both black and pink yarn. We'll start off with black yarn. For row 1, we're going to crochet a magic circle with 6 single crochets inside. Once we've completed our magic circle, we should have a total of 6 stitches. I'm going to grab my yarn, loop the yarn around my fingers twice so that I have 2 loops, and then I also have my working yarn closest to my palm. I'm going to insert my hook underneath the first 2 loops, yarn over with my working yarn, and pull that underneath both of those 2 loops. I'll have 1 loop on my hook. Then I'm going to yarn over with my working yarn, and I'm going to pull that through the loop that's on my hook. So now I'm still left with 1 loop on my hook. Now I'm going to slide the yarn off of my fingers and tighten it a bit. So this is a start to my magic circle. But to complete it, I'm going to create 6 single crochets into this ring. So I'm going to insert my hook in the circle, yarn over, pull my hook back up through the circle. I'll have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. This creates my first single crochet. So now I'm going to do this 5 more times until I have 6 stitches. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. Now it's time to close my magic circle. So I'm going to hold my stitches, and then I'm going to take my tail and pull the yarn towards me until I see one of these loops start to close up, which I see this back loop closing up for me. Then I'm going to grab that back loop, you'll see, and I'm going to pull it down towards me, and the other loop will start to close. Once that loop is closed, I'm going to take my tail again, and I'm going to pull that towards me. Now both loops are closed. Now to complete this magic circle, I'm going to slip stitch in the first stitch we created in our magic circle. So I'm going to insert my hook in the first stitch, yarn over, and pull that through all of the loops on my hook. And now we've completed row 1, our magic circle. We should have 6 stitches now. You can tighten the circle until it's completely closed if it was still open a little bit. So now I'm going to place my stitch marker underneath the last stitch of my row. and continue on. For row 2, we're going to increase in each stitch around our circle. So we are going to increase by creating 2 single crochets in our stitches. So for our first stitch, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull my hook back up through my stitch. I'll have 2 stitches on my hook, yarn over, and pull through. Then I'm going to insert my hook back into that same stitch, yarn over, and pull through. So I'm going to complete this all the way around for the rest of the 5 stitches for this row. When I get to the last stitch, I'm going to remove my stitch marker. I'll create my first single crochet, and then I'll create my second single crochet, but instead of yarning over, I'm going to start switching to pink yarn. So to do that, rather than yarning over with my black yarn and pulling it through, I'm going to yarn over with pink yarn and pull that up through my loops. So now I have pink yarn on my hook. And what I like to do is take the black yarn, my black working yarn, and this pink tail, and tie those together in a knot. This just secures the 2 pieces of yarn together. And then I'll use my scissors to cut those off. So now I can just continue working with my pink yarn. So for row 3, we're going to single crochet and then increase, and we'll repeat that pattern until we have 18 stitches. I'm going to single crochet and then increase in the next stitch. Now you should have a total of 18 stitches in your row. For row 4, we're going to single crochet in the back loops of each of these 18 stitches. So to do that, you'll see that we have our single crochets, and this is considered our front loop, and this loop back here would be our back loop. So we're only going to insert our hook to hook this back loop on our hook. We'll yarn over and pull through, yarn over again and pull through, just like we're creating a normal single crochet, but we're only going to create it using this back loop. So I'll insert my hook again in the back loop, yarn over and pull through. Insert my hook, yarn over again and pull through. And I'll continue to do this all the way around. Once you've completed row 4, we'll still have 18 stitches all around our mouth. For the 5th row of our mouth, we're going to single crochet in all 18 stitches around. After we're done with this row, we should have 18 stitches. Now that we've completed row 5, which is the last row for our mouth, I'm just going to finish this off by creating a slip stitch in the next stitch. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, and pull through, and pull again through the loop that was on my hook. Next, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to chop my yarn, but I'm going to leave a decent amount of yarn left so that we can sew the mouth to the head. So I'll leave this long tail, and then I'm going to pull the yarn so that I'm left with this nice little finish here. And we can also trim this tail that was created at the beginning. And now we've completed the mouth of our Marina keychain. Now that we've finished crocheting Marina's mouth, it's time to sew the mouth onto Marina's head that we crocheted in part 1. And I like to place the mouth around row 10 on Marina's head. So we'll count from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this would be row 10. And I'm going to place my mouth right around the middle to the top of row 10. And once I like the placement, I'm going to hold it together with my thumb. I'll hold the mouth to the head. One of the optional materials in this tutorial is sewing pins. If you don't have sewing pins, I would continue to hold Marina's mouth to her head using your thumb. Otherwise, I recommend taking your sewing pins, if you do have them, and sticking them in her mouth to attach them to her head. This will help keep the mouth in place as you sew. Next, you're going to take your yarn needle and you are going to thread the needle with your yarn tail. Once you've threaded your needle, you're going to sew all the way around your Marina's mouth to attach it to her head. So to get started, I'm going to insert my hook in her head to grab hold of one of the stitches. I'll pull my needle all the way through, and then just above that stitch that I just inserted into her head will be the stitch for her mouth. I'm just going to insert my hook into that one, and that will attach those stitches together. So I'm going to continue just grabbing a stitch from her head, pulling the yarn through, and then I'll grab the next stitch on her mouth, and I'll pull that through. And I'm going to continue sewing all the way around her mouth until I get to about this green pin right here. So probably 2/3 of the way through. I don't want to close the entire mouth yet because I do want to stuff her mouth before I finish sewing it on. So now that I've sewn about 2/3 of the way around Marina's mouth, I'm going to take out this pin, and I can also take out my other pin because now the mouth is pretty secure onto the head. And I'm going to grab some stuffing and stuff her mouth a bit. So I'm going to lift the opening and just put a bit of stuffing in there. I want to stuff it enough so that the mouth doesn't flatten out, but not too much to where the mouth domes here. I do want a nice and flat mouth. So I'm just going to put a little bit more stuffing in. And see how that works. So I think that is pretty good in terms of stuffing. So now I'm going to continue sewing around Marina's mouth until it is closed. Now that I've gone through all of the stitches, I'm going to insert my hook in the Marina. I like to insert mine all the way to the other end of the mouth so that, I guess depending on where you are, I like to knot my yarn tail at the bottom of her mouth so that it's less noticeable. So no matter where you end up on your circle, insert your yarn hook so that it comes out the bottom of her mouth. And then I like to just hook on to a stitch and tie a knot with this yarn. So I'll go through the stitch, I'll go through it once more. I'll get a little loop and then I'll insert my yarn needle, pull it through, and that should create a knot. This will secure the loose end of the yarn tail so that it doesn't unravel and the mouth will forever stay in place. So now that I do that, I'm going to insert my yarn needle through my Marina head and just out the other side of her head. It doesn't really matter where you do this, because all I'm going to do next is grab my scissors and trim this tail off. Once you do that, you don't see a tail anymore, and it's hidden inside of the Marina head. So now you've sewed your Marina mouth onto your Marina's head. Next, it's time to cut out the felt details with your scissors so that we can attach them to our Marina keychain. So we're going to start with Marina's lips. So using scissors and your white felt, we're going to cut out a circle for Marina's lips. I have already cut out my circle, but I did that by placing Marina's head on a piece of paper, and I traced around her mouth so that I had a stencil about the size of Marina's mouth. Then I used that to cut out the felt, and once I was done, I ended up with a circle shape for her mouth felt. Next, we have to cut a small circle out of Marina's mouth so that we're left with just the outline of a circle that will be her lips. So to do that, I'm going to fold my circle in half, and I'm just going to snip a little hole in the middle of the circle. Once you're done with that, you can insert your scissors and cut a small circle all the way around the larger circle. Once you're done, your lip should look like this. And you can place it on your Marina's head and make sure that it looks okay. Now we're going to cut out Marina's cheeks out of yellow yarn. For Marina's cheeks, I cut out 2 small circles from my yellow felt. I used a US nickel to gauge the size of my cheeks and then created a stencil out of that. So once you've cut out her cheeks, you should have 2 small yellow circles. And if we place this cheek on her head, we can see that it takes up about 4 rows. Next, we're going to cut out Marina's bangs and also a rectangle to create Marina's bow out of pink felt. For Marina's bangs, you're going to cut out a mustache shape from your pink felt. I cut her bangs about 1.5 inches wide. You're also going to use a pink felt to cut out a rectangle that we're going to use to create her bow. My rectangle is about 0.8 inches tall and 1.5 inches wide. Once you're done cutting out all of your felt pieces, you should have your mouth in white felt, 2 cheeks in yellow felt, a rectangle for the bow in pink felt, and a mustache shape in pink felt for Marina's bangs. Next, we're going to create Marina's bow for our keychain. To do this, you're going to need your hot glue gun with some glue and the pink rectangle that we cut out in the previous step. Since hot glue dries very quickly, it's best to watch the instructions first to familiarize yourself with what you'll be doing and then start for real. For step 1, we're going to add a small bit of hot glue in the center of the rectangle. Then we're going to fold this rectangle in half by taking the top half and matching it to the bottom half. We're going to push down and hold for a few seconds until the glue hardens. Once the glue has hardened, our bow should look like this. For the next step, you're going to rotate your bow so that the folded edge is at the bottom and the 2 flaps are at the top. Similar to step 1, we're going to put a small dot of glue in the very center of our rectangle. Then again, we're going to grab a hold of our flap and we are going to fold it in half and hold down until our glue has dried. After this step, if you turn your bow upright, it should start to look like this. For the next step, we're going to rotate our bow so that, again, our folded edge is at the bottom. And similar to step 1, we're going to place a small drop of glue in the very center of this rectangle. And then we're going to take our top flap and fold it over to meet the bottom edge and hold it down with our fingers until the glue dries completely. Once finished, your bow should look like this, and it's complete. So now it's time to glue our bow that we just finished creating onto our Marina keychain. I placed my bow 8 rows from the top, a little bit off-centered, and then from there I turned it a bit diagonally. So if we grab our Marina keychain, we can count 8 rows from the top. So right about here, I'm going to grab my bow, place it around here. I will off-center it a bit and then turn it diagonally. So I want to glue it right about here. Once I'm happy with the placement, I hold the bow in place with my thumb and I lift the bow so that I can stick a bit of glue here. and then I hold that down until our glue dries. Once the glue has dried, your bow should look like this on your Marina, and it should be secured. So next we want to attach all the rest of the felt pieces onto our Marina keychain. So what I like to do when I place my pieces is I like to actually pin them on all at once, and then I'll go back in and glue all the pieces onto my keychain. Alternatively, you can place your pieces on and one by one glue them. And if you don't have pins, you can hold the piece down where you'd like it with your thumb and then glue all the way around the piece and then let that dry and then glue the other side that your thumb was covering. But for this video tutorial, I'm going to use pins. So first I'm going to pin her lips on her mouth, and I just put it directly over her mouth and it should fit right into place. Grab some pins and I will secure this mouth in place. Next, we're going to secure her cheeks. I like to find the row that the eye overlaps, so this bottom row where the eye overlaps, and I like to place her cheek just over the bottom edge of that row and slightly diagonally down into the either right or left, depending on which eye and cheek you're working on. So then I like to just put a couple of pins to put that in place. And then I do the same thing for the other side, other cheek. I'll find this row that the eye overlaps, the bottom row, and then I'll put my cheek right at the bottom of that row, a little bit diagonal. I also try to turn my work to make sure that they align. And once I'm happy with that placement, then I will pin it down. The last piece that we have to secure on our Marina are our bangs. So I'm going to take those and I'm going to count about 3 rows from the top of her head. So we have 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to place her bangs around this area. So I'm going to place it just below row 3, in the middle of row 4. So I think this is a nice spot for her bangs. So I'm going to pin the work down here. Now that I have all of the felt pieces placed where I would like them, I'm going to start hot gluing each individual piece onto my Marina. And once you finish gluing on all of your felt details, your Marina should look something like this. We are almost done, just one more step left. For the last step, we're going to attach our jump ring and keychain to our Marina. So you're going to need your flat nose pliers, your keychain, your jump ring, and I also use a yarn needle for this step. And then of course you're going to need your work in progress Marina keychain. So the first thing that I like to do is figure out where I'm going to place my jump ring to attach my keychain. So usually I try to find the center of the circle of my Marina's head, and from experience I know that there's a stitch right around the center of that circle. So I like to place my yarn needle underneath the stitch that I'm going to attach her keychain to, just to loosen it up so that it's easier for me to stick my jump ring in. So once I've just loosened that stitch up a bit, I'm done with my yarn needle. And I can grab my jump ring. And I'm going to insert my jump ring in that same stitch that we just put over our yarn needle. So now that I have this jump ring in place, I'm going to grab my keychain and slide it inside of the jump ring. Next, I'm going to close the jump ring by grabbing my flat nose pliers and putting it around the jump ring opening. And I'm just going to bring those two ends together until they meet. And so you can see that my jump ring is closed. Once it's closed, I like to rotate the jump ring until the end where the jump ring meets is covered underneath my Marina. So now that's hidden and you can't see where the jump ring was closed together. And now we've completed our Marina keychain. Thank you so much for watching this video tutorial. If you liked it, please give the video a thumbs up. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you're interested in other crochet tutorials, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks again and see you next time.